Have you ever noticed that the more awake you become, the heavier the world feels? It's as if the veil is pulled back, not to reveal peace, but to expose a truth so raw, so unbearable, that your soul aches in places you didn't know existed. Share in the comments. Why does spiritual growth sometimes feel so heavy? And if this resonates with the ache inside you, tap the like button. Not for me, but so others know they are not alone on this sacred, silent road. They say knowledge is light, but what they never tell you is that light can also blind you. And once your eyes have adjusted, you can no longer return to the comfort of the dark. This video is not for the faint of heart. It is for those who have cracked open, who have wept without knowing why, who've smiled while bleeding within, who feel the weight of 1,000 lifetimes pressing against their ribs, and yet still rise. Why do spiritually awakened people suffer more than others? Is it karma? Is it punishment? Or is it initiation? Tonight we step into that mystery, not with answers, but with the kind of truth that rattles the bones, that sings to something ancient within you, a melody you forgot you remembered. We will walk through forgotten temples of thought, decipher symbols etched in the silence between stars, and unearth a secret buried beneath your very skin. But before we go deeper, ask yourself this. What if suffering is not the curse, but the signpost? Stay with me. The ones who suffer with eyes wide open are often the ones chosen to remember. They called it divine madness in the ancient world, the unbearable weight of seeing beyond the illusion. To the untrained eye, it looked like sorrow. To the initiated, it was the first step toward the sacred fire. In the emerald tablets, it is written, "Great is the mystery of birth into this cycle, for man was bound by the chains of the flesh." Chains not forged in iron, but in perception. The flesh, the world, the ego, these were veils, and those who pierced them paid a price. Across ages and civilizations, this suffering was seen not as misfortune, but initiation. The Sufis spun themselves into ecstasy, not for joy, but to transcend the wound. The yogis sat in silence for years, not to escape pain, but to learn its language. In the shadowed temples of Egypt, initiates walked blindfolded through halls carved with hieroglyphs, each symbol a gate, each gate a trial. To awaken was to endure. To know was to die, not in flesh, but in identity. And yet, modern man looks at pain and turns away, calls it dysfunction, labels it depression, treats it like a sickness to be cured. But the ancients knew better. They knew that when your soul begins to stir, it does not sing, it screams. This is why the Gnostics hid their knowledge behind metaphors and riddles, why the Essenes withdrew from the world, why the Desert Fathers wandered into wilderness. They were not escaping life. They were shedding illusion. The world, as it stands, is not built for awakened hearts. It rewards distraction, not introspection. It praises conformity, not courage. And so when one begins to see through the game, to feel the suffering of others as their own, to stand still in a world that runs in circles, they are often left alone, aching, wondering if they've gone mad. But this is no madness. This is remembrance. This is the fire Prometheus stole, the serpent's whisper in Eden, the lotus rising from the mud. You suffer because you are returning to yourself. You suffer because you are unlearning what never was. You suffer because the soul must stretch beyond the body. And like all stretching, it hurts. And so the question becomes, not why you suffer, but what your suffering is trying to reveal. Imagine this, a child raised in a world of shadows, believing that flickers on a wall were all that life had to offer. Then one day they turn around and see the fire casting those shadows. blinding, terrifying, beautiful. That child weeps, not because the truth is cruel, but because the lie was so comforting. This is the agony of awakening. When you see, you cannot unsee. You begin to feel energies in places others ignore. You sense the sorrow behind someone's smile. You walk into a room and feel a silence that screams. You hear the noise of souls too afraid to speak their truth. It is not delusion. It is perception sharpened to a blade. And a blade, when turned inward, cuts deep. You begin to recognize patterns, not just in your life, but in the collective dream. You see that the anger of others is not personal. It's their own unhealed pain. You see that the systems we worship are built on fear. You see that the world chases pleasure to numb a spiritual starvation. And that knowledge does not come with comfort. It comes with grief, because when your eyes open, you begin mourning everything that once felt like home. You mourn relationships that no longer resonate. You mourn the version of you that used to believe. You mourn the simplicity of ignorance, because awakening is not light and love. It is often loss and letting go. But hidden within that sorrow is a sacred paradox. You begin to see the divine within the decay. You see beauty in the breakdown. You find stillness in chaos, and slowly, silently, the suffering becomes alchemy. Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." What he didn't say is, sometimes the wound stays open. Not because you are broken, but because your soul has chosen to remain porous, to feel it all in a world that numbs itself to sleep. The awakened ones walk barefoot through life, feeling every stone, every thorn, not because they enjoy pain, but because pain teaches presence. And herein lies the strange reason they suffer more, because they no longer seek to escape it. They welcome the dark, sit with the silence, and allow the storm to speak. To the world, they may look fragile, but they are forged in spiritual fire. They carry lifetimes behind their eyes. They cry not just for themselves, but for generations, for the forgotten, for the earth herself. Their suffering is not weakness, it is initiation, a sign they are listening when the world forgets how. So when you ache, when the weight of this journey bends your spine and clouds your heart, remember this: you are not broken. You are breaking through, and still, we must go deeper, because the suffering of the awakened isn't only emotional or mental. It becomes cellular. It embeds itself in the body, settles in the chest, tightens the throat, makes the heart feel too wide for the cage of ribs it rests in. This isn't just psychological, it's energetic. You're not just carrying your own pain, you're absorbing what the collective refuses to feel. Empaths, seers, shamans, light bearers, call them what you will. They are human antennas, transmuting the heavy, invisible fog others pretend isn't there. And that transmutation? It hurts, but no one sees it, because the truly awakened ones often suffer silently, not for martyrdom, but because language fails to capture the depth of what they feel. How do you explain a storm that only you can hear? Some will say, just be positive. Think happy thoughts. But this journey isn't about bypassing the shadows. It's about walking through them, eyes wide open, heart even wider. And here's the secret most don't want to admit. Suffering is sacred. In every ancient culture, the path to higher knowledge was lined with trials, the dark night of the soul, the descent into the underworld, the sacred wound. In myth, Prometheus brought fire to humanity, but for that divine gift, he was chained and tortured. Why? Because bringing light to a world addicted to darkness always demands sacrifice. The same pattern echoes through Christ, through Buddha, through the mystics and sages the world both reveres and crucifies. To awaken is to carry a burden you didn't ask for, and still choose to carry it with grace. But here lies the shift. That suffering, it begins to transform. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and instead whisper, "What is this trying to awaken in me?" Your breakdowns become breakthroughs. Your isolation becomes sanctuary. Your sorrow becomes service. And somewhere in the center of all that pain, you find a pearl. Stillness. Not the stillness of emptiness, but of knowing, of sitting in the middle of life's storm with a spine made of stars and a gaze that remembers eternity. The pain doesn't vanish, but it loses its grip. Because now you are the witness, not the wound. And so the suffering of the spiritually awake, while deeper, becomes the womb of wisdom. Because once you stop resisting it, once you stop seeing pain as punishment and begin seeing it as preparation, something miraculous happens. You stop bleeding and begin glowing. But not in the way of false light, not the love and light illusion. Number this glow is ancient. It flickers in the eyes of those who have walked through fire and emerged not unscarred, but sacred. You become a lighthouse for others, a reminder that awakening is not a curse, but a calling. And suffering? It is not the end. It is the doorway. Now we turn towards the light, hidden inside the ache, the medicine within the madness. Because if suffering is the teacher, then what are the lessons? And how do we walk this path without collapsing beneath the weight? First, you must understand this. You are not here to escape your pain. You are here to metabolize it, to alchemize fear into wisdom, grief into grace, chaos into clarity. Begin here with presence. Sit with your suffering, not as an enemy, but as a sacred visitor. Ask it, "What are you here to show me that joy could not?" Then listen. Breathe slowly. Let the breath descend into the belly. Feel the body not as a burden, but as a vessel carrying ancient memory. Place your hand over your heart. Feel it. That rhythm is the sound of survival, the sound of your soul refusing to give up. Let it remind you that pain doesn't mean you are weak. It means you are alive. Every spiritual tradition, from the Taoists to the mystics of Kabbalah, teaches this one truth. Stillness is the gateway. So create sacred silence each day. Not hours, just moments. Moments where you drop beneath thought, beneath emotion, into the quiet reservoir that lives in your core. There, in that stillness, you'll feel something subtle. A warmth, a whisper, a presence that does not judge or fix, but holds. That is your soul, and it's been waiting. When emotions rise, do not suppress them. Feel them, name them, let them pass like weather. Cry if you must, scream if needed, rage into your pillow. This is not weakness, this is spiritual hygiene. And when you feel disconnected, return to the earth. Walk barefoot on soil, touch trees, breathe in the breath of leaves. Nature is not separate from your healing. It is your healing. Write. Journal not to be poetic, but to bleed onto the page. Let your words become ritual, each sentence a prayer, each paragraph a purge. And speak to someone, a friend, a mentor, a stranger with kind eyes. You are not meant to do this alone. Even mystics had tribes, even shamans had circles. You are allowed to ask for help. That too is holy. And when the nights get heavy, as they always do, light a candle, not for superstition, but as a reminder. Even the smallest flame pushes back the dark. You are that flame. And finally, offer your pain to service, not in martyrdom, but in purpose. The ones who've suffered deeply are often the ones who guide others through, not because they have all the answers, but because they've walked the path blindfolded and still found the way out. So become a mirror for others, a voice that whispers, "You are not crazy, you are awakening." And in doing so, you will find that your suffering was never meaningless. It was your initiation into sacred remembrance. And so, here we are. After the fire has burned through illusion, after the storms have washed away what no longer served, you stand, not healed in the way the world defines it, but whole in a way only the soul understands. Because now you see. You see that the suffering wasn't a punishment, it was a passage, a dark corridor lined with mirrors, forcing you to face every version of yourself you once abandoned. Not to break you, but to return you. You remember that true awakening is not loud or flashy. It is quiet, subtle, a soft unfurling of truth in the silence between breaths. It's how you hold space for a stranger's tears without needing to fix them. It's how you feel the ache of the world and still choose to love anyway. It's how you carry the sacred wound, not as a scar to hide, but as a sigil of your becoming. You are not the same. And perhaps that's the final truth. Those who awaken will always suffer more because they were never meant to sleep through life. They came to feel, to remember, to heal the lineage by healing themselves. And in that suffering, they become the very medicine the world forgot it needed. So if your path feels heavy, if your nights feel endless, if your heart feels too full for your body to bear, just know you are not lost. You are being forged. Your tears are not weakness. They are the rain that softens the soil before the bloom. Your doubt is not failure. It is the doorway to deeper faith. And your suffering? It is not a curse. It is a crown, invisible to most, but radiant to those with eyes to see. Now, I leave you with this. If your soul chose this path, what ancient vow did you make before you were born? And what light are you here to remember in a world that forgot? Share your truth in the comments below. Let someone else see your flame and remember their own. And if you felt seen, truly seen, tap the like button, not for numbers, but to send a silent signal to every other soul walking through their sacred fire. You're not alone. You never were. You're just finally awake.